September 26, 1983, a Soviet bunker, 5 nuclear missiles heading straight for Russia. One man had 10 minutes to decide, launch a counterattack or wait. If he got it wrong? World War III. His choice saved 7 billion lives, and you've never heard his name. Today, you'll meet the hidden heroes who stopped nuclear Armageddon multiple times, and we never even knew. What if I told you the world has nearly ended not once, not twice, but dozens of times? Nuclear weapons pointed at cities, fingers hovering over buttons, minutes away from extinction. The terrifying part? Most of these incidents stayed classified for decades. We only know about declassified American events and likely know nothing about close calls from the other 8 nuclear countries. Today, we're revealing the hidden moments that changed everything. The split-second decisions that kept humanity alive. These are the stories they never wanted you to know. The moments when ordinary people held the fate of billions in their hands. Let's dive in. Picture this. September 26, 1983, just after midnight at a secret Soviet bunker called Serpukhov 15, 60 miles south of Moscow. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov is monitoring early warning satellites when suddenly, alarms scream through the facility. The screen flashes red with one word, launch. 1 intercontinental ballistic missile detected, then 4 more all heading toward the Soviet Union from the United States. Here's what you need to understand. Soviet protocol demanded immediate nuclear counterattack. Launch on warning, no questions asked? This wasn't a suggestion. It was the rule. The entire Soviet defense strategy depended on responding before American missiles could destroy their ability to strike back. Petrov had minutes to decide, report it up the chain and start World War III, or wait and risk being responsible for the destruction of his entire country if the attack was real. The pressure was unimaginable. Every second he delayed meant less time for the Soviet leadership to respond. His superiors were waiting for his call. The military machine was ready to unleash hell. But Petrov followed his gut instinct and chose not to respond to the computer warnings. Why? Something felt wrong. A real American first strike would involve the man who saved billions of lives, lived in poverty for years, growing potatoes to survive, unknown to the world for over a decade. His wife died without ever knowing the full story of what her husband had done. It wasn't until the late 1990s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, that the truth finally emerged. By then, Petrov was a broken man, haunted by the weight of that decision, living alone in a small apartment outside Moscow. But Petrov wasn't the only one. Let's rewind to October 27, 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the most dangerous moment in human history. Beneath the waves near Cuba, a nightmare was unfolding. 11 U.S. Navy destroyers and the aircraft carrier USS Randolph detected Soviet submarine B-59 near Cuba. The Americans didn't know the submarine carried a nuclear torpedo with a 15-kiloton warhead, powerful enough to vaporize an entire fleet. They started dropping depth charges to force it to surface. Standard procedure, they thought, but they had no idea what hell they were creating below. Inside B-59? Absolute hell. The submarine hadn't contacted Moscow for days. They were cut off from the world. The air conditioning had failed in the tropical waters. Temperatures hit 50 degrees Celsius. That's 120 Fahrenheit. Carbon dioxide levels rising, crew members fainting, battery power dying. The depth charges were rocking the submarine violently, and the crew had no way of knowing these were just signals, not actual attacks. Captain Valentin Savitsky believed war had started. He ordered the nuclear torpedo armed. One nuclear weapon against the U.S. fleet would trigger total nuclear war. The Americans would retaliate immediately. The Soviets would launch everything they had. Cities would burn. Millions would die in the first hour. But there was a problem. On B-59, 3 officers had to agree unanimously to launch. Captain Savitsky, political officer Ivan Maslenikov, and Chief of Staff Vasily Arkhipov. Just a year earlier, Arkhipov had been aboard the K-19 submarine when its nuclear reactor failed. He'd watched 7 fellow officers die from radiation exposure. He knew the horror of nuclear disaster firsthand. And perhaps that's why he found the strength to say no. He argued with Savitsky, staying calm while others were delirious from heat and stress. He explained that the American tactic was to force them to surface, not to destroy them. His logic slowly penetrated Savitsky's rage. He eventually persuaded Savitsky to surface and await orders from Moscow. They surfaced, surrounded by American warships, and realized no war had started. Former U.S. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara later said they came very close to nuclear war, closer than anyone knew at the time. Presidential advisor Arthur Schlesinger called it the most dangerous moment in human history. One man's refusal to fire saved the world. These aren't isolated incidents. The nuclear age is filled with terrifying near misses that read like something out of a horror movie, except they're all real. In 1979, a computer at NORAD mistakenly indicated a full-scale Soviet nuclear attack when a technician accidentally inserted a simulation tape into the system. American forces went on high alert, preparing for the end of the world, until satellite data showed no threat. In 1995, Russian radar detected what appeared to be a missile launch off the Norwegian coast. It was actually a scientific rocket studying the Northern Lights. President Boris Yeltsin had his nuclear briefcase open, with 8 minutes to decide whether to launch a retaliatory strike. He chose to wait. The rocket fell harmlessly into the sea. In 1961, a B-52 bomber broke apart over North Carolina, dropping 2 nuclear bombs. Information declassified in 2013 showed that only a single switch prevented one of them from detonating. One switch stood between North Carolina and a nuclear explosion. During the 1956 Suez Crisis, NORAD received reports of Soviet threats that turned out to be a wedge of swans over Turkey mistaken for aircraft. Swans nearly started nuclear war. Birds almost ended human civilization. A 2016 study tallied 13 high-risk nuclear threats just from the Cold War era. And remember, these are only America's declassified events. We likely don't know about close calls from Russia, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, North Korea, the UK, or France. How many other Petrovs are out there living in obscurity? How many other Archipovs took secrets to their graves? We'll never know. Here's the terrifying truth. The threat hasn't disappeared. As of September 2023, the United States alone possesses 3,748 nuclear warheads. 9 countries currently possess a combined 12,700 nuclear weapons, and tensions are rising to levels not seen since the Cold War. In December 2024, Russia and Belarus signed an agreement confirming the presence of Russian nuclear weapons in Belarus, moving them closer to NATO territory. A 2016 study warned that while safety measures have improved, the margin for error is small and the consequences of a mistake could be catastrophic. Think about it. If India and Pakistan accidentally started nuclear war, the resulting nuclear winter could kill 1 billion people worldwide. People who have nothing to do with the conflict, just erased by the consequences of 2 nations' mistake. Both Petrov and Arkhipov made judgment calls. Human decisions against protocol, against technology, against enormous pressure. They had seconds or minutes to make choices that would affect billions. But here's the question that should terrify you. What happens when there's no human in the loop? When AI controls the weapons? When decisions happen in milliseconds, too fast for human intervention? Stanislav Petrov himself said he trusted neither people nor machines, but trusted least of all a person who becomes a cog in a machine. He argued that only the complete elimination of nuclear weapons by all countries would spare the world from an eventual strike. He didn't believe in deterrence. He believed in abolition. Because he knew better than almost anyone how close we've come and how lucky we've been. So here's what you need to remember. We're alive because of luck and a handful of people who chose courage over protocol. Stanislav Petrov died in 2017, largely unknown until his final years. Vasily Arkhipov died in 1998 from radiation-related cancer, still suffering from his exposure on the K-19 decades earlier. Two men, two decisions saved billions of lives, and nobody knew. They received no parades, no monuments, no place in history books for decades. The next time someone tells you one person can't change the world, remember these names: Stanislav Petrov and Vasily Arkhipov, the men who saved the world. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button because history's darkest secrets deserve to be told. What other hidden moments changed everything? Drop your thoughts below. Until next time, stay curious. Would you like me to format the numbers like 3,748? In AP style or Chicago style, which differs slightly in how they treat large numerals?